Kayla Wilson had recently switched to a new school, leaving behind the familiar streets of Detroit. In her previous life, survival meant mastering the art of fighting. 8 years of mixed martial arts had transformed her fists into powerful tools. She was a black belt wrapped in teenage quietness. However, the bullies at Millbrook High failed to notice this depth. All they saw was a quiet black girl by herself, an easy target. They approached her with demands and threats, increasing their abuse each day. Then one afternoon, they crossed a boundary. Laughter echoed in the hallway, and someone muttered, "She deserves the treatment." The hallway became a silent witness, but Kayla stayed strong. They assumed she was fragile and would give in, but they were mistaken. Before we dive deeper, share in the comments where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you won't want to miss. At 5:30 in the morning, the alarm buzzed, but Kayla was already awake, gazing up at the unfamiliar ceiling of her new bedroom. Detroit felt like a distant memory, even though only 3 days had passed since the moving truck departed. She got out of bed and quietly made her way to the basement, where her mother had arranged a heavy bag in the corner. 40 minutes later, sweat trickled down her forehead as she completed her morning workout: jab, cross, hook, uppercut. The moves came naturally, a result of years of practice, but today the routine felt different. Today, the motions carried a sense of urgency. "Kayla, do breakfast?" her mother called from upstairs. Dr. Patricia Wilson stood by the stove, still wearing her scrubs after the night shift at Millbrook General. "How do you feel about today, baby?" she asked, concern etched on her face. "Fine," Kayla replied, grabbing a piece of toast. Another day at school. Her mother's eyes showed worry. She understood this change was challenging. Millbrook was nothing like what they were used to. Saying it was just different didn't capture the whole truth. When Kayla entered Millbrook High through its front doors, the sea of pale faces confirmed what she already suspected. Among 800 students, she could count the black students on 2 hands. The corridors hummed with the usual morning excitement, but conversations quieted as she walked by. Whispers followed her, but she kept her head high and her shoulders relaxed, just like Coach Chin taught. Never show weakness and never look for trouble. The first period, biology, went reasonably well. History during the second period was bearable enough, but the real lessons started at lunchtime. The cafeteria was like a map of social groups. Popular students occupied the tables in the center, athletes claimed one corner, and theater kids gathered near the windows. Kayla took a sandwich and searched for a free seat. Suddenly, a voice echoed across 3 tables. Well, look who decided to show up." Derek Morgan stood 6 feet 2 inches tall, with a confident swagger from never being challenged. His Letterman jacket fit perfectly on broad shoulders, but his cold blue eyes never smiled. Behind him, Jake Wilson cracked his knuckles, and Tommy Bradley snickered. The cafeteria grew silent as all attention focused on the brewing confrontation. Kayla Wilson proceeded toward an empty table, but Derek blocked her path. "I'm talking to you," he said, his voice calm and commanding. "We need to have a conversation." She met his gaze steadily, not showing any sign of hesitation. "About what?" "How things operate around here." Derek's grin widened, revealing too many teeth. "See, new students usually pay a small welcome fee. Consider it insurance to make sure nothing bad happens to them." Jake and Tommy flanked her closely, close enough for her to catch the scent of their cologne. The cafeteria remained utterly still, 200 students watching as if it were some form of dinner theater. Insurance against what? Kayla's tone stayed even, more curious than hostile. "Accidents," Derek shrugged. "Lockers jamming, books going missing, people bumping into you in the hallways. Funny how clumsy some people can be around here, especially those who don't belong," Tommy added with a spiteful grin. Kayla placed her lunch tray on the nearest table. When she turned back to Derek, her stance was relaxed, but something in her eyes had changed. "I do not pay protection money." Those words lingered in the air like a direct challenge. Derek's smile faltered for a brief second before returning with full force. "That's where you're mistaken, girl. Everyone pays. The question is whether you pay easy or you pay hard." He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried weight throughout the silent room. "Unless you believe you're too superior for our small system here, thinking you're above the rest of us. I do not pay any attention at all, she said, picking up her tray and walking past him toward an empty table. For a brief moment, Derek stood stunned, clearly not anticipating such a direct refusal. The cafeteria fell back into quiet again. This is not finished, he shouted after her, loud enough for everyone to hear. No one disrespects me in my school. No one. Kayla sat down and unfolded her sandwich as if nothing had occurred, yet her side glance followed Derek's every move as he left angrily with his friends. At a table on the opposite side, Marcus Thompson shook his head and quietly told his companion, "That girl has no clue what she has just started." Conversations slowly resumed, but the atmosphere had shifted. By the end of lunch, word had spread throughout the school that the new girl had openly challenged Derek Morgan. Kayla took a bite of her sandwich, chewing deliberately. She had hoped to get through at least her first day without conflict. However, some things were unavoidable, and backing down from tormentors was never an option for her. The real question was not whether Derek would strike back, but when and how far he would be willing to go. The harassment began before the second period ended. Kayla approached her locker, keys in hand, but the lock refused to turn. She tried again, carefully checking the combination she had memorized that morning. Nothing worked. Suddenly, Jake Wilson came into view beside her, smiling. Locks can be difficult to manage when they become damaged. She looked closely at the mechanism. Someone had stuffed gum into the keyhole. "This is just the start," Jake said as he walked backward, watching her response. "Derek has a long memory," he added. Third period, American history, passed without any problems. But as Kayla gathered her books, she realized her notebook was missing, the one with 3 days' worth of notes. She searched her bag twice before surrendering. In the hallway, she spotted Tommy Bradley showing off the notebook to a group of freshmen, making exaggerated gestures while reading her handwriting in a mocking tone. "Look at this fancy penmanship. She must think she's something special." Kayla calmly stepped up and said, "That belongs to me." "Prove it." Tommy held it high like a playground bully. "Maybe if you ask nicely, I'll think about giving it back," he taunted. She neither asked nor reached for it. Instead, she pulled out her phone and took a picture of him holding it. "What are you doing?" Tommy's bravado faltered as she slid her phone back into her pocket, ready in case she needed to report theft. Tommy's face turned red, but he dropped the notebook at her feet, the pages spilling all over the hallway floor. As Kayla knelt down to gather her notes, a pair of worn sneakers appeared in her field of vision. She looked up to see Marcus Thompson, the same student who had made the comment at lunch. "You need some advice," Marcus said softly, looking around cautiously to ensure no one overheard. "I'm paying attention. Derek Morgan isn't just some privileged kid acting tough. His father controls half of the businesses in town, including the car dealership where my mother is employed. His uncle is the police chief. When Derek wants something to occur, it happens." Kayla gripped the notes she had just recovered. "Are you trying to intimidate me?" "I'm trying to protect you." Marcus's voice was filled with sincere worry. "Last year, there was a student named Miguel Santos, a transfer like you. Derek felt Miguel was getting too close to a girl he liked. Miguel ended up with a fractured nose and 3 broken ribs, supposedly from falling downstairs, according to the official statement." "Do you really believe that?" Kayla asked. "I believe Miguel switched schools a fortnight later," Marcus replied. Kayla stood up, her heart racing. "I can handle myself." "Just be careful," Marcus warned, but she was already moving toward the exit. The afternoon saw the bullying intensify. Someone accidentally spilled chocolate milk on her backpack at lunch. In chemistry class, her safety goggles vanished, forcing her to use a scratched pair that made reading measurements impossible. By the 6th lesson, a clear pattern had appeared. Derek's gang took turns making her life miserable, always with plausible deniability, always with witnesses who only saw accidents. During 7th period, the harassment finally crossed a line. Kayla was sitting in English class, trying to concentrate on the discussion about To Kill a Mockingbird, when Derek raised his hand and said, "Mrs. Patterson, I think we should hear from our newest student about this book. I bet she has valuable insights into its themes." Mrs. Patterson smiled encouragingly and asked Kayla if she would like to share her thoughts on Harper Lee's depiction of racial injustice. The situation was clear, But Kayla responded with careful reflection, discussing the novel's treatment of prejudice and moral bravery. She spoke for 2 minutes, expressing her ideas clearly and intelligently. When Kayla finished, Derek started slow clapping and said, "Wow, that was so well spoken. You're really articulate for..." He paused deliberately, leaving the implication hanging. "I mean, it's nice to hear someone who can express themselves so clearly." The classroom fell silent. Mrs. Patterson's face turned red, but she seemed unsure how to respond to the blatant racial undertone without making the situation worse. Kayla replied evenly, "Thank you. I appreciate you recognizing my ability to communicate effectively." Derek's smile faltered slightly at her composed answer, but he pushed further. "It's just refreshing. Sometimes people from certain backgrounds struggle with academic discussions." The silence became heavier, and a few students shifted awkwardly in their seats. Kayla responded firmly, "I'm sure you will find that people from all backgrounds can surprise you." As the bell rang, she calmly gathered her books without rushing. She walked out, holding her head high, yet inside, a new clarity had formed. The ordeal was finished. Derek had crossed a boundary that could never be undone. In the hallway, she heard Derek laughing with his friends, likely praising his own cunning act, unaware of the storm he had just ignited. On that Friday morning, Kayla found her locker oddly decorated, a banana taped to the metal door with a note saying, "Welcome to the jungle," in Derek's unmistakable handwriting. She removed it expressionless, knowing a crowd was watching, some feeling ashamed while others snickered. Kayla crumpled the paper and threw it away but kept the tape as proof. "Did you not appreciate your gift?" Derek appeared with his usual crowd, speaking loud enough for the growing onlookers to hear. "I figured you might miss the urban wildlife," Kayla responded, closing her locker with calm precision. "But you might want to improve your handwriting since it makes it easy to know who sent it." Derek's jaw clenched. He was not used to his target speaking back, especially not publicly. "Perhaps you need a lesson in respect," she added, "or maybe a lesson in basic human decency." The hallway buzzed with whispered speculation, and students began pulling out their phones, sensing something much bigger was unfolding. Throughout the morning, the bullying only grew stronger. In PE class, someone had placed itching powder hidden in her gym clothes. When Jake Wilson intentionally collided with her, causing her tray to tumble onto the ground, he remarked, "Oops. Hope you're not too clumsy to clean that up." Kayla crouched down to collect the spilled food as other students carefully stepped around her. A few offered assistance, but she declined, confident she could endure Derek Morgan's pranks. What she found unbearable was the gathering crowd that seemed entertained by the spectacle. The breaking point arrived in 8th period study hall when Kayla sat alone at a corner desk, focused on her calculus assignments. Derek and his friends approached as the study hall monitor had left temporarily, leaving 30 students unsupervised. "Hey everyone," Derek announced loudly, his voice echoing throughout the room. "I have something special to share." He pulled out his phone, and suddenly a distorted version of Kayla's voice echoed from a small Bluetooth speaker. It was a recording from her English class discussion the day before, but twisted and altered. Her sincere remarks concerning racial injustice had been cut and rearranged to make it sound like she was expressing hateful comments about white people. The manipulated audio portrayed her as an angry racist outsider who despised her new school and everyone there. Students appeared shocked, puzzled, some openly furious. "Guess now we know how she really feels about us," Derek said smugly, slipping his phone away with satisfaction. "Good thing we got to hear her true thoughts." "That is not what I said." Kayla's voice broke through the chatter, but Derek spoke over her. "Are you accusing me of lying? Everyone just heard you. Everyone heard you tampering with recordings to make me look like something I am not." Derek stepped closer to her desk. "Why would I need to edit anything? We all know what kind of person you truly are." The study hall door opened, and Mrs. Chin, the supervisor, entered. The room fell silent as students suddenly became absorbed in their assignments. "Is everything okay in here?" Mrs. Chin asked, sensing the tension. "Perfect," Derek replied with a smooth politician-like smile. "Just having a friendly conversation about current events." When the bell signaled the end of the period, Kayla collected her books, her hands barely shaking as students filed out. Some avoided her gaze while others stared openly. The harm had been done. By the next day, Derek's doctored audio clip would spread all over social media. On her way to the last class, Kayla caught bits of whispers. "I can't believe she said that. She seemed so quiet and nice." Derek was right about her. At her locker after school, she found Marcus Thompson waiting for her. "That recording was fake," he said softly. "I was in English class and listened to what you really said." "It doesn't matter," Kayla replied, collecting her belongings. "The damage is done. You can fight it, try to prove it was altered, or I can confront the source," Marcus suggested. Kayla glanced at Marcus' worried expression, then at the students passing by, some still whispering and pointing. Derek had been methodical in his effort to isolate and disgrace her, every action designed to provoke a reaction that would justify his cruelty. Perhaps it was time to give him exactly what he wanted. She slipped out of Marcus' hold and moved toward the exit. Outside in the parking lot, Derek and his group were fooling around, probably celebrating their successful character assassination. They looked so self-satisfied, so certain of their power. Kayla left her backpack by the school door and approached them with determination. It was time for the conversation Derek had been pushing for, but this time it would be on her own terms. Derek was still laughing about the recording when he noticed Kayla coming toward them across the parking lot. His laughter faded as he caught sight of her determined walk, the way she let her backpack fall like a lifeless burden. Well, look who finally decided to come and talk." Derek straightened up, his confidence swelling as a small crowd of students gathered, sensing the tension. Kayla Wilson stopped 10 feet away, her voice steady and firm. "I'm done with your games, Derek. The fake recordings, the harassment, everything stops now." "Oh no, it ends when I say it ends," Derek replied, his confidence swelling as a small crowd of students gathered, sensing the tension. "You think you can just stroll into my school and disrespect me? Think again. This is your school." Kayla stepped closer, correcting him calmly. "Last time I checked, this is a public institution funded by taxpayers, including my mother." Derek's expression twisted in anger. "Don't get smart with me. You're outnumbered and outmatched. Walk away while you still can." "I tried walking away. You followed. I tried ignoring you, and you escalated. I tried being reasonable," she said, stepping nearer now. "Now we settle this my way." Tommy Bradley cracked his knuckles, sneering. "Are you sure you want to take this on? 3 against 1 doesn't look good for you. And neither does picking on someone you thought couldn't fight back." Kayla's voice stayed calm, but her stance shifted slightly, balancing on the balls of her feet, ready. "Last chance, Derek. Agree to leave me alone, and this does not have to get ugly." Derek laughed harshly, the sound ringing sharply in the afternoon air. "You're hilarious. What do you think you're going to do? Call your mother if you need to, because I'm about to give you exactly what you asked for." The moment Derek reached out to grab her arm, Kayla's training took over. With smooth precision, she twisted away from his grasp, caught his wrist, and used his own force to make him stumble. Before he could regain his balance, her elbow struck his solar plexus, causing him to double over. Jake charged next, swinging wildly and full of anger. Kayla ducked, swept his legs, and sent him crashing to the pavement. Tommy paused, suddenly realizing things were not going according to plan. Derek, breathing heavily yet furious, straightened up. "You think you're tough? Let's see how tough." What came next was harsh and calculated. Derek had strength and fury, but Kayla had technique and almost a decade of focused training. She flowed like water around his awkward attempts to grab or strike her, delivering precise blows whenever an opening appeared. Jake and Tommy tried to assist but only managed to get in Derek's way or end up on the receiving end of Kayla's defensive strikes. The battle moved across the parking lot as Derek kept charging, swinging, and refusing to fall. By the time it was over, Derek lay face down on the pavement with Kayla's knee pressed against his shoulder blades. They had covered nearly half a block. Derek's nose was bleeding heavily, Jake nursed a swollen eye, and Tommy carefully held his ribs. Kayla asked, with steady breath despite the effort, "Are we done?" Derek gasped, "Get off me." She repeated calmly, "Are we done?" Applying gentle pressure, the tension was gone. Everything settled. And you are going to leave me alone, all three of you. No more games, no more harassment, no more doctored recordings. Is that understood? Yes, he replied, defeated. Kayla released him and took a step back, watching as Derek slowly rolled over and pushed himself up. Blood dripped from his nose, and the small group of onlookers remained completely silent, clearly shocked. Good talk, she said, then turned and headed back toward the school to grab her backpack. Meanwhile, Principal Martinez was finishing some paperwork when her secretary knocked and said, "Mrs. Martinez, there has been some sort of incident in the parking lot. Students are saying a fight broke out." Principal Martinez sighed as she reached for her jacket and asked, "How bad is it?" "Well, nobody's called for an ambulance, but you might want to see this with your own eyes." Rushing outside, she found Derek Morgan wiping blood from his face while Jake Wilson and Tommy Bradley were helping him stand up. A group of students stood nearby with phones out, their excited chatter filling the air. "What happened here?" the principal asked sharply. "Nothing," Derek muttered, avoiding her gaze. "Just messing around." "Derek Morgan, your nose is bleeding. That is not just messing around." "I fell," Derek answered quickly. "I wasn't paying attention and tripped over my own feet." Principal Martinez gave a doubtful look, but before she could ask more, Derek and his friends walked away, Derek leaning heavily on Jake for support to be why the next morning, the rumors had already turned into legend, with some saying Kayla had fought 5 boys. Although the truth was remarkable, gossip at school rarely cared for facts. During second period, Jessica Martinez, a sophomore with anxious energy, approached Kayla at her locker, followed closely by her friend Amber. "Hey," Jessica whispered, glancing around to ensure no one else was nearby. "Can we talk to you about something?" Kayla watched the two girls. Jessica appeared nervous but resolute, while Amber looked ready to run at the first sign of trouble. "What is it?" "We heard about what happened yesterday with Derek and his friends," Jessica explained. "We were wondering if you might help us with a similar situation." "Similar how?" Amber muttered, her voice barely audible. "There are these guys from Riverside High bothering us at the bus stop after school yesterday. They grabbed my backpack and emptied everything out," Jessica finished. Amber added, "They called me terrible names and said they would come back today to finish it." Kayla shut her locker and turned to face them fully. "So what exactly are you asking me? Do you want me to come with you to the bus stop today?" Jessica's voice trembled between hope and fear. "Maybe if they see you there, they'll leave us alone." Kayla looked into their frightened eyes, recalling Derek's bleeding nose, the tampered recording, and every small detail of the embarrassment that sparked yesterday's clash. "I'll be there," she said firmly as they got on the bus. Jessica was already uploading the video to her social media profiles. "Everyone has to see this," she said enthusiastically. "Everybody needs to realize that someone is finally standing up against these tormentors." Kayla settled into a seat, unaware that Jessica's video would be shared hundreds of times before dinner, transforming her from a local hero into an internet sensation overnight. By 7 p.m., Jessica's video had been shared over 300 times. By 9 p.m., it had reached 1,000 shares. The caption read, "Girl confronts bullies harassing students at the bus stop." Finally, someone fights back. Comments flooded in from students across 3 different school districts, accounts of bullying, threats, and abuse that had been quietly spoken about in school corridors suddenly found a public platform. This is the girl who stood up to Derek Morgan too. It's about time someone stood against the Riverside crew. She should teach self-defense classes. Meanwhile, across town, Derek Morgan sat in his bedroom, an ice pack pressed to his still swollen nose, watching the video for the 5th time. His phone buzzed with notifications as friends sent him the link, asking if he was okay. This was the very same girl who had embarrassed him. "This cannot be real," he whispered as he scrolled through the comments. Someone had already pieced things together, sharing their own experience with Kayla Wilson in the school parking lot. His phone buzzed and Jake Wilson was the caller. "Are you seeing this?" Jake's voice was tight with frustration. "Everyone is seeing this. My dad is already asking why I look like I was hit by a truck. She is making us look like complete fools." Derek clenched his jaw. "She is not a superhero. She just got lucky." Meanwhile, in Riverside, Brad Matthews was having a similar talk with his group. "How did we seem so weak?" Connor demanded, pacing his garage while Tyler held his still aching wrist. "We are bullies," Derek snapped. "That's the whole point. Fear keeps people in line. But if word spreads that some high school girl can take us down, our reputation is ruined." Brad concluded, "No one will respect us after this." By the next day, Kayla Wilson discovered her voicemail overflowing with messages from parents. Some demanded that Kayla be removed from school for alleged violence, while others applauded her for defending their children. Most parents wanted to understand why the school had not already taken action regarding the bullying their kids had been reporting. Principal Martinez was deeply affected by her court testimony concerning the ignored harassment reports and took decisive action by establishing new procedures to tackle bullying. The promise of zero tolerance evolved into a genuine commitment rather than just empty words found in a handbook. Derek Morgan never returned to the school. The combination of perjury charges and civil lawsuits from several families whose children he had harassed resulted in his enrollment at a private military academy located 3 states away. Meanwhile, his parents quietly sold their home and relocated, unable to face the community after their son's offenses became public knowledge. Jake Wilson and Tommy Bradley both admitted guilt for submitting false police reports. They were sentenced to community service and probation, required to attend therapy sessions and complete anger management programs. The boys from Riverside received similar penalties. Brad Matthews was expelled and faced multiple harassment charges after victims came forward following the trial. Connor and Tyler were suspended, awaiting their own legal processes. Their reputations were severely damaged. The most meaningful transformation came through Kayla Wilson's self-defense program, which gained official approval and expanded throughout the entire school. 3 months after the trial, Coach Rodriguez stood in the main gym, observing more than 100 students engaged in what was now called the Student Empowerment and Safety Program. The waiting list for participation had grown considerably, reflecting the program's success in promoting safety and confidence among the student body. Kayla Wilson had not only fought back against her tormentors but had also sparked a movement that would change the culture of her school forever. As she looked around at the students practicing their techniques, she felt a sense of pride. She had turned her struggle into strength, and in doing so, had empowered others to do the same. "Remember," Kayla called to the group, "the objective is always to calm things down and get away safely. Fighting should be the last option, not the first." With that, she smiled, knowing that she had not only found her voice but had also helped others find theirs. The journey was far from over, but together, they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. I hope you enjoyed this story. Please like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Meanwhile, I have selected 2 stories for you that I believe you will appreciate. Have an amazing day.